spoke about a lengthy telephone conversation you had with your brother reflected in records over an hour that you couldn't recall, and some text messages thereafter sent between you and your mother. And that states Exhibit 94 for identification, those text messages. And I want to go through those text messages now. So we start Friday, March 29th, 3:15 p.m. A text message sent by you to your mother. Just on the phone for an hour and a half with Billy. I didn't say much, just listened. He talked the whole time. Would you typically call your brother Billy?
Yes.
He's still in the mind frame that Maureen and Dan and everyone fucked him over. He would say things that made no sense. Dan, are you familiar with a close friend your brother had who had a first name by the name of Dan?
Yes, Dan LaRochelle.
Dan LaRochelle? The defendant was in a frame of mind about Maureen and Dan and everyone fucking him over. Do you recall the defendant, your brother, ever talking to you about such issues that he had with his wife and his friend Dan LaRochelle and beliefs that they were somehow, use words, fucking him over?
Do I recall
Yeah.
conversations? Yes.
And what would the defendant be talking about in that regard?
Well, there was many ways that my brother expressed ways that Maureen was fucking him over. But for Dan, I think in this instance, if I can recall correctly, he was talking about feeling betrayed by his best friend.
Do you know if that was going back to the intervention over almost a year before? If you recall.
Yeah. If I can recall correctly, I believe it alluded to my brother talking about a conversation that he had with Dan in his truck, and how he confided things in Dan, and Dan didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore.
Continuing, he cares about money and his lawyer. He cares, is that your brother? Your
Yeah.
brother cares about money and lawyer?
Yes.
With respect to your brother caring about money, do you recall that being a topic that he would talk to you about often?
Yes, it was the foremost in his mind. Success.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I apologize.
Yes, he would talk about it quite often. He very much cared about what people thought of him and his success and his jobs and how he appeared to other people.
He wants a separation and not a divorce, so he doesn't have to pay child support. And on a positive note, he might get a job in Littleton. With respect to the defendant wanting a separation, not a divorce, so he doesn't have to pay child support, do you remember conversations he'd have with you about those subjects?
Yes.
And what do you recall about those conversations?
They were a part of his rants. He would just go on these anger-driven conversations about what he wanted and what would, worst case scenarios, what he was gonna do.
Did your brother explain why he had an issue with paying money to support his two kids?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
He wants a separation and not a divorce, so he doesn't have to pay child support. Do you recall your brother explaining why he didn't want to pay money to support his two kids, Ella and Gavin?
Yeah, he mentioned because the money would go right to Maureen, and he didn't want Maureen to have the money.
And then we have a text message from your mother to you, and then you know we just talked about everyone else. Was that something that your brother would do regularly, discuss others with respect to the problems that he was experiencing in his life?
Yes, it was commonplace.
And how so?
He would talk about the positive things that are happening in his life, as well as the things that he felt weren't going well. And when he talked about those negative things, he always blamed Maureen.
You talked about how you could not recall speaking with your brother so close in time to Maureen's death. About when was the last conversation you recall having with him? About?
I don't remember, I'm sorry.
With respect to matters that the defendant talked to you about, would they be discussed repeatedly in multiple conversations and be common themes?
Yes.
Would those be the various subjects that we've gone through this afternoon that you've already talked about and shared with us?
Yes.
So looking at State's Exhibit 91, the calendar, I need to ask you about the last contact that you had with your friend, Maureen, and when was that?
That afternoon, Thursday.
Wednesday, April 3rd was the last time you saw your friend? Her death was Thursday.
Yeah. Yes, it was Wednesday afternoon, the 3rd.
Was that by phone or in person?
In person.
And where did you see Maureen?
She had come over with the kids to our house on Valentine Drive.
And when you say our house, what are you referring to?
My mom and I.
About how long of a drive is it time-wise to where your mother lived in Manchester to Maureen's home in Londonderry, if you recall?
I'd say 20 minutes tops.
When you saw Maureen for that last time at the place where you were living in Manchester, what did you and she talk about?
She let us know that she was scared. She let us know that she was concerned for the kids and what she was going to do. We let her know that she had a place to stay and always
When you say we told her that she had a place to stay, who's the we that you're talking about?
My mother, Brenda Quinn.
When you're talking about Maureen was scared and worried about the kids, was that with respect to the transition of moving into your mother's place?
Yeah. And we discussed school systems. We discussed how we were going to get the toys from her neighbor's house. She had put most of the kids' belongings with her, or left the toys with her neighbor in Londonderry. We discussed where the kids' room should be, where she wanted her bedroom to go. We just let her know that everything would be okay.
Were you being supportive to your friend,
Yes.
like a good friend would be?
Yes.
Did Maureen and you and your mother talk about more future plans with respect to the house, if you remember? So the immediate plans were Maureen and the kids were going to live in the house. Was that going to be a temporary living arrangement that you remember discussing?
The plans, as far as what my mom and I discussed, was that Maureen and I would live there, take over the mortgage, and eventually my mom would move to Maine.
And where would your mom move to Maine to?
She has a lake house in Maine.
Is that the house in Acton, Maine?
Yes.
So you, your mom, and Maureen talked about Maureen and the kids living at that house. Did Maureen talk about custody with respect to the marriage and who would take custody of the children?
She didn't discuss it with me.
Do you know what her plans and intents were with respect to custody of the kids?
No, I don't know. I would just assume it was 50-50.
Based on what you and Maureen talked about, how she was talking to you, did you have any concerns that she may try to harm herself when she left you? Anything?
No, not at all.
Do you recall if a move-in date was talked about with respect to when Maureen and the kids would move into the house and start their new life with you and your mom in Manchester?
No, we didn't talk about that because Maureen wanted to talk to Billy first before she made any plans and let him know what was discussed.
Now, were you aware of whether or not the defendant knew about the plan for Maureen and the kids to live with you and your and his mom?
Was I aware that he knew
Yes.
before I talked to Maureen that day?
At any point in time?
No, the only thing I knew was that he got wind that she might stay with us because he said that he expressed anger that she would be taking his support and that we're supposed to be his support, not hers.
So your brother expressed anger by you and your mother helping your sister, your friend, and her kids. You were, in substance, betraying him. What was his demeanor when he was talking about this betrayal?
Angry.
We read from your text message on March 29th how the defendant did not want a divorce from Maureen so he wouldn't have to pay child support. That last evening when you saw your friend, did she talk about her plans with respect to that marriage to the defendant?
Yep, she said that she was scared, that she had spoken to the police.
Well, let me just ask, did she talk about her intent with respect to divorce? Did she state that that was going to be her intent?
Yes.
And that's what she was going to do?
Yes.
And was that the last you ever saw or heard from your friend?
Yes.
No further questions?
Any cross-examination?
Yes. Good afternoon. You and Maureen were close friends.
Yes.
In fact, you introduced Bill and Maureen. Is that right?
No.
Your sister introduced Bill and Maureen?
Yes.
You said you knew Maureen for 15 years before she died?
I don't recall the exact amount of time, but at least 15 years.
Okay. Fair to say you were closer with Maureen than you were with Bill?
No, I wouldn't say that.
No? How often would you and Maureen get together alone without Bill?
Not often.
No? So over the course of at least 15 years, most of the time you spent with Maureen was also spent with Bill?
Billy would be there in some aspect, yes.
He would be there
Most
for
of the
most
time.
So this is, we're talking family gatherings,
Yes.
holidays,
Yes.
birthdays.
Yes.
And these were gatherings that happened at your mother's house?
Yeah. Sometimes at my mother's house, sometimes at parks, sometimes at Chuck E. Cheese, sometimes at their house.
Okay. So you observed Bill and Maureen's relationship over the course of their nearly 15-year marriage,
Give or take, yes.
and you described, you said, instances of unkindness, of neglect. And you described hearing Bill yell at Maureen at their house.
Yes.
You never saw Bill hit Maureen.
No.
You never saw him push Maureen.
No.
You never saw any instances of violence.
Physical violence, no.
That's correct. Maureen never told you that there was violence happening in the home.
No.
You never saw Maureen with bruises or other visible injuries.
No.
You said that at some point you ended communication with Bill, is that correct?
Yes.
When do you think that was, that you ended communication with your brother?
I avoided communication with him, but I can't tell you exactly when the last point of communication was.
Okay. Would you say you avoided communication with Bill for a matter of weeks, months, years, or something else?
For a matter of months.
Okay. And during these months when you were avoiding communication with Bill, would you still see and communicate with Maureen?
Yes.
Okay. the years, you and Maureen got together, you spoke regularly,
Yes.
she confided in you,
No, she was very private.
she was private, she didn't like telling you about her problems,
Correct.
she didn't like telling you about difficulties at home.
Correct.
Now, in the spring of 2019, Maureen reached out to you asking for some logistical help with moving out of the house.
Yes.
You were on an email that included your mother and your sister, some members of Maureen's family, friends of hers.
Yes.
She was asking for help packing up things. Is that correct?
Packing up, general home improvement, organizing, yes.
Okay. She was asking for help packing, moving, organizing. You mentioned that you and her and Brenda were discussing her plans to move herself and the children into Brenda's home.
Correct.
So when Maureen tells you in the spring of 2019 that she is planning to leave Bill, was that a surprise to you?
She didn't tell me that she planned on leaving Bill.
She told you she was moving into your mother's house with you, correct?
No, she didn't know that she could do that until the day that she came over.
And the day she came over was April 3rd?
Correct.
So on April 3rd, was that the first you had heard that Maureen was considering moving out of the home?
Yes.
Maureen never discussed her marriage with you before the spring of 2019?
She discussed that there was obviously issues, gambling. She discussed issues of him not coming home at night. She discussed issues of him leaving or not picking up the kids places where he was supposed to be and he didn't show up. She discussed him withdrawing money and gambling savings away.
Okay. It sounds like she did confide in you about some difficulties she was having in her marriage.
In the end, yes.
Okay. And when she would confide in you, would you encourage her to stay married, or would you encourage her to consider leaving?
I was just there to listen. I was concerned for her happiness and for my niece and nephew, but I didn't encourage her to do one thing or another.
Okay. In the spring of 2019, it sounds like Maureen spoke with you and with Brenda about her plans.
Her plans for what?
Her plans to move into Brenda's home.
She didn't have any plans to move in.
Maureen didn't have plans to move into Brenda's home?
No.
You were included in a series of emails from Maureen asking for help with packing, organizing.
Yes.
And She needed help packing and organizing so that she could move out of her home in Londonderry, is that correct?
No, I just was under the assumption that she needed help sprucing up the place in case they sold it.
You weren't upset with Maureen for leaving Bill?
No,
As far as you knew, Brenda, your mother, was not upset with Maureen for leaving Bill?
no,
You two welcomed her into your home.
yes,
You agreed to take her in.
yes,
You told her she always had a place to stay with you if she needed to.
yes.
You mentioned an intervention that you attended in 2018. And the subject of that intervention was Bill's gambling. Is that correct?
Yes,
That intervention was also meant to address worries about Bill's mental health.
correct.
And you were at that intervention along with your mother. Is that correct?
Yes,
And your sister. And your sister?
yes,
There was no professional interventionist present at the intervention?
no,
There was nobody facilitating the intervention?
no,
When you last saw Maureen, you said that was April 3rd, 2019.
correct.
She was worried then about the kids.
Yes,
They were about to go through a major transition.
yes,
She was worried about how to get all of the belongings from the neighbor's house up to Manchester.
I wouldn't say worried, she just mentioned that the kids' toys were with a neighbor
Okay.
and that we'd have to get them at some point.
Okay. But she didn't have a specific move-in date decided on at that point?
No, we didn't discuss that.
Okay. You said she wanted to talk with Bill first?
Yes,
You guys reassured her that everything was going to be okay?
yes,
That she would have help moving?
we didn't discuss that.
Okay. You assured her she would have a place to stay going forward?
Yes,
One moment, please.
Sure.
Do you recall when the intervention took place?
no. It was at
28?
night.
Was it night? Do you remember the year that it took place?
2018, 2019, I don't know.
Had you ever had conversations with Maureen prior to that intervention about her concerns about Billy's mental health?
Yes,
You had had conversations with her about concerns about his gambling before then?
correct.
Maureen reached out because she needed help figuring out how to best help Billy.
Oh, yes,
She would reach out to you and other members of your family.
correct.
And did Maureen reach out to you about some of these concerns as early as 2016?
I don't recall one way or another, sorry.
In 2016, did Maureen email you and a number of relatives asking for help, asking to meet about Billy?
I can't say one way or another, I'm sorry.
Is your email address karencoloration@yahoo.com?
Yes,
And nothing further.
Nothing, thank you very much.
And may this witness be excused by both sides?
Yes.
Attorney Pervin Dunn?
Yes.
Ma'am, you can step down, you can stay or leave as you choose. Thank you.
State next calls Robert Cox.
If you could raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide this court and jury shall be the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Thank you. Please be seated. Once you're settled in, sir, and close enough to that microphone, if you could state your full name for our court reporter and spell your last name.
Robert Cox, COX.
Thank you. And Mr. Cox, please remember that since we're all wearing masks, our voices aren't projecting the way they normally would, so if you could, in your mindfulness of that, keep your voice much louder than you would normally. Thank you.
Mr. Cox, over here. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Back in 2019, where were you working?
I was the director of the Methuen Housing Authority.
Did you say Methuen?
Yes.
Did you know Maureen Argie from your employment?
Yes.
And what was your position in relation to Maureen's position?
I was the executive director of the authority. Maureen was the resident services coordinator. So she wasn't a direct employee of the housing authority. She was a contracted employee with Merrimack Valley Elder Services. But I would oversee what she would do, and she would interact with us and my staff.
For about how long had you worked with her in 2019? About?
Up until that time?
Yes.
I first met her in 2001 in Newburyport, and started working closely with her in the Bill Ricca Housing Authority, and I believe it was 07 or 08.
I want to turn your attention, this is a calendar that the jurors have seen multiple times before. I want to turn your attention to Wednesday, April 3rd of 2019. Did you see Maureen that day?
Yes, I did.
And when you saw her on April 3rd, how did she appear physically?
She appeared like she always does. She was normal.
Did she look sick or complain of any illness that you
No,
recall?
not at all.
For what purpose did you see Maureen on April 3rd?
I had a job interview with her, or she was interviewing with me for a job that she had applied for.
And what position had Maureen applied for?
She was applying for the Director of Public Housing.
The position that Maureen had applied for, Director of Public Housing, did that constitute a promotion over the position that she held at the time?
Yes.
Did that position that Maureen applied for also constitute an increase in pay over the position that she held at the time?
Yes, I wasn't sure what she was making, but I knew that this position paid more.
Based on your conversation and interactions with Maureen on April 3rd, how did she appear with respect to the promotion and her prospects of receiving that promotion?
The interview went well. She was eager for the opportunity. She was pleased with how it went, upbeat, hopeful. She seemed like she was pleased with everything that was going to happen.
At any point in your interactions with Maureen on that day, did you indicate or suggest to her that she would not receive the promotion?
No, I made a point of telling her that I would be in touch with her about a second interview, and that would be the next
Did you have any
week.
further contact with Maureen after that job interview on April 3rd?
No, I did not.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Cox, you were Maureen's supervisor, you said?
I was the director of the authority. Her supervisor was through her employer, which was the Merrimack Valley Elder Services.
Okay. You weren't a supervisor, but this was a professional relationship?
Yes.
You didn't know much about her personal life?
I knew some details, but not intimate details. I knew she was married, 2 kids, lived in either Londonderry or Derry. That was about it.
Okay. She didn't discuss her home life with you?
No, the only thing she talked about were her kids.
That's all I have for you.
Any redirect?
No, Judge, thank you.
Okay. And may this witness be excused by both sides?
Yes, Judge.
Yes.
Sir, you can step down, you can stay or leave, as you choose. Thank you.
The state next calls Mallory and Littman.
If you could raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide this court and jury shall be the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Thank you.
Once you're close to that microphone, please share your full name with our court reporter and spell your name.
Sure. Mallory Littman, Mallory. Littman, Littman.
And Ms. Littman, because we're wearing masks, I'm reminding everybody to keep their voice up. You have to project
Okay, thank you.
louder than you would much normally, so please keep that in mind.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Where do you work?
New Hampshire State Police.
And the major crime unit?
Yes,
And for about how long have you worked for the major crime unit?
5.5 years.
Back in April of 2019, were you one of several investigators assigned to investigate Maureen Argie's death in Londonderry, New Hampshire?
I was.
Among the work that you performed in that investigation, did you participate in the processing of 118 West Road in Londonderry?
Yes,
We'll get to that assignment in a moment, but did you also conduct several witness interviews?
I did.
Who are some of the people who you do recall interviewing as part of that investigation?
I interviewed Kelly Hobbs, Dan Hobbs, and Karen Argy.
With respect to your interview of Karen Argy, did you take photos of anything as well as interview her?
I did.
And what did you take photos of?
I took photos of her cell phone.
In order to get access to her cell phone to take photos, did you need a warrant or did she grant you access to her cell phone?
She gave me written consent to take photographs.
So let's focus on your assignment pertaining to 118 West Road in Londonderry. You conducted scene processing,
Yes,
and we'll discuss what that entails in a little bit. After police responded to 118 West Road on April 4th of 2019, did you accompany an assistant deputy medical examiner into the residence to view the body of the person found inside?
yes, I did.
And is that standard procedure for untimely death investigations?
Yes.
The person found dead inside the home, who was that?
Maureen Argie.
While you accompanied the assistant deputy medical examiner into 118 West Road, did you take numerous photographs, including photographs that documented how Maureen Argie's body appeared when the body was found?
Yes,
After that photographic documentation of the body, its positioning was obtained, was judicial authorization sought allowing for the search and the processing of the entirety of 118 West Road?
yes,
So in other words, a search warrant was obtained?
yes, the search warrant was obtained.
Is processing a location a task for which you've been assigned before your involvement with respect to 118 West Road?
Yes,
Or about how long have you been processing locations up to your work with respect to the 118 West Road?
about 9 years.
And up to that time, about how many locations have you participated in the processing of?
Over 100.
And if you can explain generally for the jurors what is entailed by processing a location for potential evidence, what work is generally performed by you and other investigators
Sure.
as part of that process?
Sure, when we're processing any crime scene location, we take photographs, video, the way that the scene is when we get there, and we usually do a diagram, and we use a Faro 3D scanner to document, which helps with the diagram. We also take photographs before and after everything is moved and searched, as well as collect evidence that could be important for the case.
What were your assigned role or roles in the processing of 118 West Road?
I was the officer in charge of the crime scene. I took video of the crime scene, and I also took photographs of, with the assistant deputy medical examiner, as well as the blood stain patterns that we observed.
Were you one of several investigators who processed 118 West Road for potential evidence as part of that investigation into Ms. Argy's death?
Yes,
Were several hundred photographs taken of the exterior and the inside of the house as part of that processing?
yes,
Are some of the photographs taken during the initial viewing of Ms. Argy's body, as well as the crime scene processing that took place afterwards? Exhibit 61 through 78. And we have gone through these photographs before. And again, the photographs that we'll be viewing shortly are only some of literally hundreds of photographs that were taken.
yes, these are the photographs, yes.
So the majority of the photographs that we'll be reviewing shortly are from the upstairs bedroom and bathroom. But were those the only areas of the home that were processed and photographed as part of the investigation?
No,
In addition to taking hundreds of photographs of the inside and the outside of the home, was that home documented by other means as well? You said you took a video, is that correct?
yes,
And you also did what's called a Faro scan?
correct.
And what is a Faro scan?
It's a scanner that takes 3D images and measurements. It takes photographs and scans of a location and it's used to import all the data into a program that then creates a 3D image of the location.
So if we could begin by a general outlay of the house at 118 West Road in London.
Sure.
Please.
So the house sat approximately 50 feet from West Road. There was a driveway. If you're looking at the house from West Road, there's a driveway to the right. And the house was a 2-story, single-family home with 2 bedrooms upstairs and the typical kitchen, bathroom, a living room downstairs, and a basement.
So what we're going to look at first is State's Exhibit 60. This is an overhead photograph that the jurors saw before. This is an overhead depicting in part 118 West Road.
Yes,
Was this particular photograph taken as part of the processing that we'll be discussing shortly?
no,
All the other photographs that we'll be discussing, they were part of that processing or the initial entry with the Assistant Deputy Medical Examiner?
yes,
Is 118 West Road accurately labeled on this photograph, about in the middle of the photo?
it is.
The driveway into 118 West Road, is this the only vehicular access to the home?
Yes,
The next slide is State's Exhibit 61. And does this slide depict various outside areas of 118 West Road?
yes, it does.
And we're going to look at the individual photos now, and let's start with the photo on the upper left-hand corner.
Okay.
From what vantage point is this photograph taken?
That is standing right on the road, or right on the road, the line of the road, looking at the house.
And at some point in time, you may need a laser pointer.
Thank you.
The driveway into the residence, that's here on right.
Yes,
The truck parked in the driveway, was that there when you arrived and other officers arrived in order to first remove the body and also process the scene?
yes, it was.
So turning to one of the other individual photographs in the exhibit. So this depicts a side of the house.
Yes, that's the side with the driveway.
And actually, let's go back here. We have some yellow tape. That's police tape,
Yes, that's police crime scene tape.
and that was placed after police response to the scene.
Correct.
So going back to the other photo, do we see in the background some additional of that yellow police tape that we just talked about?
Yes,
No, there's a portion of driveway in front of these trash cans. What is this portion of driveway here?
is it a part of the driveway where another vehicle could park without blocking the entrance to the house?
The next photograph that we'll be viewing, is this taken from another viewpoint, this area?
Yes,
Is this that same parking area that we saw before?
yes, it's just from a different angle.
Can we see additional yellow police tape here?
Yes,
What's the residence over here through the trees?
that's 116 West Road.
Maybe difficult to see, but you also have the photos in front of you. We see what appears to be a box truck here on the back, a box truck.
I do.
So looking at State's Exhibit 20, a still photo of surveillance video that the jurors have seen before. Do we see a similar box truck right here?
Yes, I do.
Let's take a look at the last of the photos. Is this a closer shot of the pickup truck that we saw before?
Yes, it is.
The door past this pickup truck, what area of the house does this lead into?
That leads into the kitchen.
Inside this kitchen area were apparent blood-stained items found in a trash can.
Yes, they were.
And what items in particular that do you recall being recovered from the kitchen area?
Bloody tissues and paper towels, as well as medical non-adhesive wrapping, the wrappings for it, as well as ripped up pieces of paper
And those ripped up pieces of paper, where were they found in the kitchen?
in the trash can.
Were those torn pieces later attempted to be reconstructed?
Yes, they were.
So the next slide, State's Exhibits 62 and 63. So, with respect to the photograph on the left, what do we see here?
That's the pieces of paper laid out on butcher paper.
And those are the torn up pieces that you were talking about before that were found in the trash can in the kitchen?
Yes, they are.
We have a handwritten TLE 8. What does that mean?
That's the way we identify evidence. And Trooper First Class Tara Elsmiller was the evidence technician for this case, so those are her initials marked with 8. That's evidence number 8.
And the photograph on the right, is this of the same torn up pieces, and then here it was attempted to be reconstructed?
Yes, it is.
So the next slide, we see a closer shot of the torn up pieces of paper.
Yes.
You talked about blood staining or apparent blood staining. Do we see some of that in this photograph?
You can, let's see, right here and here.
And if we go to the next slide, is this again that same torn up pieces of paper, but this time attempted to be reconstructed?
Yes.
And you have that in front of you?
I do.
And if you can attempt to read what you can from that photo, it states Exhibit 63.
Sure. Attention, YMCA, the comma, Ella and Gavin Argy will be picked up from YMCA after school. Their 5:30 p.m. grandmother, Brenda Quinn, needed number with it's it, if or it, and a 603-762-0602. Thank you, Maureen and Bill Argie.
This same reconstructed note is seen in the next slide, next to State's Exhibit 90, which is an exhibit that the jurors have seen before.
Yes.
Before discussing additional specific items and that were documented during the processing of 118 West Road, were any firearms found inside the house?
No.
Was divorce paperwork found inside 118 West Road?
Yes.
And with respect to the divorce paperwork, is that the next slide, which is State's Exhibit 64?
Yes.
So again, I know these are hard to see. We'll see a closer up photograph of the picture on the left first. And we also have a larger close-up shot here. According to the recovered divorce papers, who is the petitioner for divorce?
William A. Argy Jr.
We'll next move to the photo on the right in State's Exhibit 64. What is the stated positioner the stated position with respect to petitioner William Argy with respect to temporary child support and child support as part of that divorce decree?
None.
So no temporary child support and no final child support.
Correct.
And that's according to the paperwork recovered from the house?
Yes.
At the time of Maureen Argie's death, did she and her husband, William Argy, each have their own cell phones that were working and operable at the time the investigation began, at least?
Yes.
Was either of those cell phones found during the search of 118 West Road?
No.
Was either of those cell phones ever recovered by investigators?
No.
Based on your own experience as an investigator, are cell phones of suspects, of victims, of potential witnesses of crimes under investigation typically searched through electronic means in order to obtain data that's found on a physical cell phone?
Yes, they are.
Generally, for what reasons are cell phones electronically searched during investigations? If you can give some examples.
Sure. Usually, cell phones are electronically searched in order to obtain written communications via cell phones with other people, contacts, any search history, any photos, videos that were taken by the person, or any contacts that they may have had prior to the event.
And with respect to search history, is that dealing with phones that can access the internet and make searches on, for example, Google using a cell phone?
Correct, or any applications that they would have used to search anything.
And based on your experience as an investigator, generally what types of information can be recovered from a cell phone from a physical search of the actual cell phone?
Content of communications, such as on text messages or from applications, as well as photos or videos sent via text message or taken with the phone.
Could you also get internet search history?
Correct, yes, internet search history as well.
As to the contents of text messages sent and received from a cell phone or internet search history, during investigations, are cell phone records often obtained from the cell phone companies?
Yes, they are.
That is, for example, Verizon Wireless, you get the records from Verizon Wireless.
Correct.
And were cell phone records for the defendant and Maureen Argie's cell phones obtained as part of the investigation in this case?
Yes, they were.
Is there information that can be obtained through a physical search of a cell phone that cannot be obtained through obtaining those cell phone records, for example, from Verizon Wireless?
Yes.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Text content is not normally obtained, sometimes from cell phone records, but not all content, or depending on time frame, as well as applications. They can disappear after a certain amount of time. You might not get all of it from an application, or videos or photos that were actually sent that you wouldn't get from the cell phone companies, as well as any search history would not be on the company's records.
But in this case, no searches for such information was conducted on the cell phones of Maureen Argie or Bill Argy that they had when she died?
No,
Again, why not?
we were never able to recover them.
So going back to items that were recovered as part of the investigation into Maureen Argie's death, was a fingerprint card for William Argy found inside 118 West Road?
Yes, it was.
And is that the next slide, which is State's Exhibit 65?
Yes.
And it may be difficult to read, but you have that again in front of you for what entity were fingerprints obtained for?
They were for North Carolina Medical Board, a medical license application.
I want to show you a portion of the defendant of William Argy's bank record, State's Exhibit 5, which the jurors saw before, page 104. And these records show withdrawal to the North NC Medical Board on January 16th in the amount of $240.
Yes.
Was a receipt for Home Depot also found inside 118 West Road?
It was.
Is that Home Depot receipt the next exhibit, which is Exhibit 66 on the screen?
Yes, it is.
And you have the receipt in front of you, I believe, or no?
I do.
And am I pointing at the right direction? The question I'm going to ask you is, when was that receipt created?
Yes, April 4th, 2019 at 9:11 a.m.
And this is from the Home Depot where?
on Nashua Road in Londonderry, New Hampshire.
And the time of the purchase, again, is 9:11 a.m. on April 4th.
Yes.
Going to the next slide, it's still the surveillance video, and it shows a time of 9:11 a.m. on April 4th. That matches up with the time of the receipt.
It does.
Going back to that receipt, what was purchased at about 9:11 on April 4th at the Londonderry Home Depot, according to the receipt that was recovered from inside 118 West Road?
2 items, a utility knife, a pack of them, and then a retractable utility knife.
And what is a utility knife?
A utility knife is used for multiple purpose work things. They're usually fixed blade, whether they're you can fold them or they're retractable depending on the type.
And that's the kind of the razor blade type of knife that you can flip open with your thumb?
Yes.
Were life insurance policies also seen and documented inside 118 West Road?
Yes.
And how many life insurance policies were found?
2.
And can you describe where the life insurance policies were found inside the home?
Sure. They were found on the first floor, and there was an extra room on the first floor in between the bathroom and the living room, and the room had cabinets and children's toys and games. It's kind of an additional room. It was laid out. Both of them were laid out in folders on top of a ironing board that had been unfolded.
The next slide, State's Exhibit 67. Is this a photo as a part of one of the life insurance policies that was found in the house?
Yes,
The next slide is an enlargement. Do you have that in front of you? or
I
not?
do.
Who was listed as the insured for this policy?
Maureen Argie,
And who was the owner?
William Argy Jr.,
And what was the face amount or payout amount on Ms. Argie's death?
$400,000.
So I'd like to turn your attention now to the second story of 118 West Road. What rooms were in the upstairs of the residence?
Upstairs, the residence, when you go up the stairs, there was a hallway. Right in front of you was the bathroom, and then to the right of you was the master bedroom, and then to the left was the children's bedroom that had 2 children's beds in it.
So if we can first focus on the upstairs bathroom. Was apparent blood seen and documented inside the upstairs bathroom?
Yes,
So the next slide we have is State's Exhibit 68. Are these just some of the photographs taken from inside the upstairs bathroom?
yes,
We're going to be seeing individual photographs for each of these 4 photos. Let's start with the vertical photo on the upper left-hand corner.
okay?
From where was this photograph taken?
This is standing right in front of the bathroom door in the hallway, right at the threshold.
And what is the room to the right as we look into this bathroom?
That's the master bedroom.
And is there apparent blood documented in this photograph?
Yes,
Just where are some of the areas? where
sure,
you
on
see
the floor here, you can see the,
Is it also
strip
in the
stains.
sink and in the toilet else we'll be seeing?
yes,
Were apparent blood stains seen in the, actually strike that, what kind of flooring was between the bathroom and the master bedroom to the right?
carpet,
Were apparent blood stains seen on that hallway carpet in between the bathroom and the master bedroom?
yes, you can see the stains right here.
And the observed staining that was seen on the carpeting, would that be consistent with movement of a person with open and bleeding wounds moving between those 2 areas of the home?
Yes, it is.
The vanity, the sink that we see on the right of the photograph, is that the same sink that we'll be seeing in this next photograph?
Yes,
And here, do we see some more of that, what appears to be blood?
yes,
We also have what appears to be some clothing, including a bra, laid out on the corner of the sink.
yes.
Was that women's clothing or men's clothing?
Women's clothing.
Turning to the next photograph from the bathroom area, and this is the toilet area.
Okay. Yep, yes,
And is there, it's a little hard to see, but do we see a little bit of what appears to be a wastebasket right here?
yes,
And were any apparent bloodstain items, medical supply wrappings found in that wastebasket?
yes, they were.
And let's turn to the last photograph
Okay.
of the bathroom area. And what are we looking at with respect to this photograph?
That's the other side of the bathroom with the shower and the laundry baskets. There's bloodstains here inside the shower, on the floor and on the curtain.
So Judge, maybe we should approach for a minute?
Sure.
So ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this appears to be a reasonable time to break in the testimony today before we get into another topic. And so I'm going to do that now. Please be back here so we can resume at 9 o'clock. Be mindful of my instructions to you. And please let me know if anything comes up that I should know about. Thank you.
Thank you.
All rise.
You can step down if you want.
Thank you.
Before the...
I just just leave these here?
Yep,
Okay.
just leave them right there.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Yep, leave it, you can leave that there too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Judge, there is one matter.
Oh,
Sorry.
sure. Yep.
It's pertaining to witness sequestration. Recall that before we began evidence in this case, the state had asked for a witness, standard witness sequestration order.
Hold on just 1 minute. Not a problem. I just wanted you present so that I could make sure you were getting a record.
Start over.
Yes, please.
Before we began evidence in this case, the state had asked for a standard witness sequestration order. The defense was in agreement, except they wanted Brenda Quinn to be allowed to participate in the actual evidence presentation. The state objected. She was not a victim under the Victims' Bill of Rights and should have been excluded. The court agreed with the state. During the course of evidence today, we had a bench conference, and during that bench conference, at this point, it is not the state's intention to call Ms. Quinn as a witness. It was relayed to us that it's also not the defense intent to call Ms. Quinn as a witness. I know that the defense wanted to have her be able to appear in the courtroom, with the understanding that neither side at this point is calling her as a witness. The state does not object to lifting of witness sequestration for her, but that is with the caveat that she's not being called as a defense witness because the state still has those concerns for the witness sequestration for that witness in particular.
Your Honor, at this time, we have no plans to call Brenda Quinn as a witness. And I don't foresee a reason that we would.
Okay. Well,
And just in addition, I know we filed a witness list saying that we, reserve the right.
Right.
Usually if we have a specific witness that we do want to call in our case, we would list that witness. We didn't do so in this case.
Okay. Well, based upon those representations, I am fine with, since she's not anticipated to be called as a witness, then she will be allowed to enter the courtroom as she wishes and observe the remainder of the trial.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.